So when people get divorced, it feels obviously, I've been there, so I can say this kind of like a nightmare. And my guest today actually said, I just wanted to wake up from the nightmare that was my life and let out a really huge scream. I'm laughing because it's kind of funny, but it's very true. And I'm not making light of divorce. Divorce is a tough deal, it's very hard. My guest, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, says he didn't want to eat, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't focus. Life as he knew it died. And then he started looking at the bright side. And that's what I want to talk about today, the bright side of divorce. My guest is Hirsch Sermon, and I'm going to list his credentials: MBA, CPA, CDFA. And Hirsch is a financial divorce coach. We're going to get into what that is. But Hirsch also went through a divorce. He's the father of three. And so he experienced this process of going from feeling like it's a nightmare, being depressed, not sure what you're supposed to do now, to looking at the bright side and all of the wonderful things that he learned along the way and the happy life that he ended up as. So, hi, Hirsch.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Always nice to talk to you. I know I've been on your podcast radio show a couple of times. You've been on my podcast before. And while I completely respect and know that you do such a wonderful job as a financial divorce coach, and I want to tell people what that means, I think just as important is you talking about your own personal divorce and how hard that was for you.
Every divorce is unique, right? Everyone has their own challenges, but there are like themes. And yes, if you're going through a divorce and you're not feeling these emotions and you're not feeling challenged or struggles, or maybe even a little fear, then you should kind of be regrouping a little bit and understanding what's going on, what's the direction of your life and where it's going.
So we know that it's hard, but we know that there is a bright side. And I always tell people, I want to tell my listeners, when you start to lose hope, try not to look back and think about what you had and how you had money and how you felt secure and how you were in love once. Instead, look to today and tomorrow. Don't you agree, Hirsch? Like, just wipe the thoughts right out of your head when you're thinking about how depressing this is and how scared you are. Just don't go there.
A
Just
100%.
tell
And the thing that
yourself, I'm going to focus on what I can control, which is today and tomorrow.
Right. And I think, the thing that people forget when they look back and they think about some of the positive things that were in their life, well, they're also not such positive things. And that's why you're in this situation of getting divorced. We can't cherry pick and then say our life was amazing. Our life was, had good and bad. But the focus should be today, tomorrow, and how do we make it better?
And how do we make it happen? How do you get
Right.
from point A to point B? And
Yeah.
it's not an easy journey. It's not a short journey,
Right.
but I'll tell you, it's a journey that I believe from personal experience is filled with so many amazing, wonderful surprises along the way. In other words, it's not all crying. There is crying, but it's not all up depressing and crying. There are so many wonderful things that happen.
Absolutely. They
And that's
really
what
are.
we're going to talk about. So, Hirsch made a list of 10 reasons why looking at the bright side can completely change your perspective, your divorce experience, and your life. And I'm just going to read these and then we'll just discuss them.
Sure.
And Hirsch wrote this article, by the way, on Divorce Girl Smiling, which you can find at divorcegirlsmiling.com. So the first one was, what do I want and how to get it? I'm sorry. What do I want and how do I get it? And when people get divorced, they probably haven't asked themselves this question in a long time, right?
Right. Right. They've lost themselves a lot. I was in a 20-year marriage and I was caring for everyone else. I was looking at, my kids. Are they going to be okay? What's happening there? And we don't always ask ourselves, what do we want? And sometimes we've lost even the knowledge of what do we want? what brought us joy. And it's a good opportunity to really bring that back into your life and have a fulfilling life.
And really, you say here the possibilities are just endless, but that you need a strategy.
Yeah.
So, how do you get a strategy? I mean, like, how do you figure it out?
You know, one of the things I do with clients, and this is so not financial, right? Even though I'm a financial coach, is we talk about their values and their priorities. And sometimes they need a little time to think it through and say, you know, I haven't thought about that in a while. I've always thought my priority is my kids, my priority is my marriage. Well, it's a different dynamic. Sometimes the kids are grown now and they've moved out of the house. So, really getting back to the core of who you are, what brought you joy, what are your values, and what are your priorities of what you want in your life is your starting point, I think.
And I want to tell my listeners, if you are sitting here going, well, I just don't know. I don't even know where to begin. Here is what you need, in my opinion. A divorce coach, in my opinion, is a must. When I got divorced, there was no such thing as divorce coaches, didn't even exist. These people who are divorce coaches, most of them went through a divorce themselves, and they have certifications, they're trained, and they ask you all these questions. They give you homework for you to figure it out. They help you along the way figure out what you want because you don't even know what that looks like. And also, I think therapy is great. I think a divorce support group is great. But also, Hirsch, this is where I want to ask you about what you do. So, Hirsch calls himself a financial divorce coach. And gaining insight into your finances is a big part of figuring out what you want to do. And so, Hirsch, tell people how you work with them because they might need to go back to work for financial reasons. And
Right.
then what I want and how do I get it? That is part of the conversation. Or they might want to change jobs. Or tell me more about the financial side of divorce.
So the first thing is I work almost exclusively, not by design, by default, with the spouse who doesn't take care of the finances. So the first thing is definitely an educational component that's needed. You really need to know who you are. And I actually created a program from my work after about 2 or 3 years. I realized, you know, people don't know who they are financially. And so I created a program around that to help them understand that. I think, you know, one of the major things that I like to do with people is help them create a values-based approach. So again, going back to those priorities, I do prioritize, organize, and then simplify. That's kind of the basic structure, getting them to really understand what's important. How do we get that together and put a structure around it, and then simplify that for them to kind of put it maybe into a systemized way that it becomes easier. It can be daunting if you've never done it. So that's something that I think is reassuring and helpful to have that structure and that support. So that's one of the pieces that I do. I
Okay, and I
think
just want to stop you for 1 second to
Sure.
tell my listeners, there's no shame if you've never read a statement, if you don't know how to invest and what the market does. Like I have my Series 7 license. I used to work in that industry. So when I got divorced, I understood the stock market. If you don't, there's no shame in it, and it's easier to learn than you think. And
Yeah.
so what Hirsch helps people do is get educated and empowered so you have the facts and then you can make better life decisions knowing this. You know, if you're sitting here listening to this and thinking, my husband did everything, he paid the bills, I never saw a statement, I never looked at anything, I just put my credit card in and that was it. That's okay. Nobody's judging you, but you need to become empowered. And I think that's really where Hirsch can help, right, Hirsch? And then also with
Absolutely.
taxes. Now you got to do your own taxes. So, really, Hirsch, you are a wealth of information for people who really need to get empowered financially.
And I will say 7 out of 10 families do not have a budget. So to your point, there's no embarrassment. The people I find who are the most critical are themselves, that they don't know this. But in a marriage, we kind of divide and conquer. If we sat together as a couple, did every single item that's needed, we never get it done. So we say, you take these responsibilities, I'll take those. It just means at this point, you might have to learn things you haven't done. But it's easy to do that if you have the right support and the right guidance, is the truth of it. And going through the divorce, just to kind of finish on the question, whether it's a negotiation package, whether it's the tax side of it, whether it's some forensic work, whatever those are that are needed, I work with people doing that. I don't manage money, I don't do business valuations, things like that, but all of the kind of personal needs, that's really where I help them create the strategy, implement it. And it's not just for the divorce, but beyond. I think it's very important to keep clients focused beyond the divorce, because ultimately that's where they're going to be living.
And then Hirsch also can help you find a financial advisor to
Yes.
invest your money also. And he would, if he knows you, he'll know what a good fit is.
Right. I've vetted them technically, but again, on your website as well, divorcegirlsmiling.com, there's some very good money managers, and just make sure they're the right people for you. But there are some fantastic resources there as well, even beyond the money managers as well. I encourage people to go look.
Thanks. You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. I'm here today with Hirsch Sermon, who is an MBA, CPA, CDFA, and financial divorce coach. Hirsch and I are talking about looking at the bright side of divorce, specifically 10 reasons that looking at the bright side of divorce can completely change your perspective, your divorce experience, and your life. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're only on reason number 1. So we'll be right back. We have 9 more. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Going through a divorce can feel like a nightmare, but today we are looking at the bright side of divorce and everything good that comes with it, because believe me, there are things that come that are so, so good in life. I'm here today with my guest, Hirsch Sermon, MBA, CPA, CDFA, and financial divorce coach. Hirsch, reason number 2 that looking at the bright side can completely change your perspective is you wrote here, never before. What does that mean?
So this is an opportunity to really start again in a way you've never had before. I think often as you're going through a divorce and you facing the challenges of the process and of divorce, you forget often how strong you really are. What have you endured at this point? Whether it's through the marriage, whether it's the kind of fear of the future, whatever it is, there's a lot that you might be enduring. Now they have the opportunity to start again, but with so much more. They've got wisdom behind them, they've got life lessons behind them. And I think they really have the opportunity to start again in a way that you've never had before, even in your youth, whether it was coming out of college or whatever. You've really never had the opportunity to build a life the way you do now.
Well, I know a lot of divorced people who are listening who are saying, well, I don't want a new life. I like the life I had. I was comfortable. I love my husband. I was felt safe, and I don't want this new life. And here's the advice I have for you. I get it. I was there. I was like, same thing. When I look back on the life I had when I was married, when I had a lot of money and I could buy whatever I wanted, and I was a stay-at-home mom, those times, when I look back, was the worst time of my life. I didn't like who I was. I didn't feel productive. I didn't have self-confidence. I am so much happier making my own money and finding a career that I love. And what I'm saying to you is that you're going to realize this later. Don't you think, Hirsch?
I do. There's a concept I want to share, and it's called the broken vase concept, and they use it a lot in therapy. But the idea is, imagine you had, I don't know, a Ming vase that's like priceless, right? And your kid's running through the hall and knocks it over and breaks it. And now you've got all these shards on the ground, right? You've got 3 options. You can try to put it all back together the way it was, right? You're going to see the cracks and you're going to see the chips. You can say, look, it's pieces of shards, and throw it away. Or you can take these shards and create something new, a new mosaic out of it, something beautiful out of it. And I think that's exactly what a divorce is. We want that old life. Well, there's cracks and chips in that life. It wasn't as perfect as we sometimes think it was. We can't really throw that life out because this is who we are today based on our experiences. So the last option is you have a beautiful mosaic that you can make out of what you've come from. And I think it's a nice analogy for people going through a divorce.
Yes. I was just going to say, and also you made it yourself. Like the
Correct.
vase was
100%.
already
Yeah.
given to you and you didn't make that, but you made, I love this analogy. It's great because
Yeah, I
there's
heard about
so
it
much.
recently and it resonates so strongly with my clients. It's amazing.
And people, like you said earlier, do not understand how strong they are. And when you
Right.
realize it and you go, wow, like I really am doing well. I never thought I could do this. It reminds me of the Whitney Houston song, Give Me One Moment in Time,
Yeah.
when I'm more than I thought I could be. I mean, it's like, wow, that gives me the chills because I believe that every divorced person ends up feeling that way if they make good decisions, forget the bitterness, stop nickel and diming and just go do your own thing.
Right. Right.
All right, next one is I'm going to combine the next two. My real friends are and my new friends are.
So with a divorce, unfortunately, you are going to lose some friends. Some people are going to kind of be on spouse's team versus your team, and that's okay because you want the real people in your life that are going to be there supportive. And so, really understanding those people are supporting you, being there. And I will just say, from their perspective, they're not always sure how to react. They're not sure of the things to say. So keep that in mind. But those are people who are standing up for you when they still invite you over, when they want to go out with you, whatever it is. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it is, like you said earlier, join a support group, whatever it might be in those respects. Learn and get those people in your lives that can really guide you because maybe they're ahead of you in the process or they've learned some skills that you want to learn. My one caveat with that, by the way, when it comes to that, is be careful of the people who are still kind of bitter about their divorce. That's why they want to reach out to you so they can vent for themselves. Those are not the people I want as those new friends or prior friends. It must be people who are positive, who are not going to drag you down, but they're going to lift you up and encourage you.
So when I was getting divorced, I didn't know any divorced people. This was in 2007. And I was the first one in my community. I live in the suburbs. Everyone was kind of talking about me. And I was didn't even know one person, seriously, had never talked to anyone who was divorced. I met this girl in at the gym and she was getting divorced also, and we became best friends. And I always told my kids when they were young and they had friend problems, I'd be like, you only need one friend. And that's kind of how it is here. If you can start and you have a friend that maybe you say, okay, we're going to go walking together 3 days a week or twice a week, and you keep seeing that friend and you can share experiences. And that's like Hirsch said, that friend is positive and not bringing you down. Of course, you're going to both cry about your divorces, but that's all you need. And then our friend group kind of started growing from there when these other women started getting divorced. And it was really beautiful because we were all really there for each other. And then Hirsch, the other thing I wanted to say is that you said like, oh, it's really nice if these friends are there for you. Well, some of them were and some of them weren't. I got
Correct.
disinvited to a lot of things.
Right.
I didn't get invited to some parties all of a sudden. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And what I want to tell my listeners, it has nothing to do with you and it's their own issue and whatever. Don't even think twice. You didn't do
Correct.
anything wrong. It's their own insecurity. Maybe they think divorce is contagious or they're afraid you're going to hit on their husband, whatever it is. It's their problem and you're not doing anything wrong.
100%. 100%.
All right, next one. I love this one. Reconnect.
So reconnect is important. I think sometimes you let friends go by the wayside because you're withdrawing. You go through a divorce and you kind of pull in a little bit and you do let some of your own friends go, and it's a good time to reconnect with them and even thank them. Just I know I haven't been the greatest friend. I just want to thank you for being there. It goes a long way. That's number one. But the thing that I think we often lose is reconnecting with ourselves. You know, I was married for 20 years. I was a husband. Okay, that's connected to somebody else. I was a father. That's connected to somebody else, being my kids. But I lost connection with who I was. And I think that's another thing that becomes important. Like, I didn't know how to be by myself. I hadn't been for 20 years, and all of a sudden, and now I'm actually very comfortable when I have time by myself. In fact, sometimes you're almost like kids. I need time, go on vacation, go somewhere else, right? I say that in jest, obviously.
But
But
Hirsch, you're so not alone. Like
yeah,
every person getting divorced fears being alone. It's one of the biggest fears people have. And
correct.
what's so nice is that they don't realize how nice it is to be alone because you're not really alone. You're just alone for a little while.
Right, right.
All right, I want to go back to the part about reconnecting with friends and tell my listeners that if you reach out to somebody on Facebook who you haven't seen since you lived, in the city 25 years ago, they're going to be so happy to hear from you. It's going to make your day, even if you're scared. And I want to just give an example. Last summer, I happened to see my college roommate from freshman year 40 years ago at IU. I saw her on Instagram and I was like, oh my gosh, we lost touch right after college. I reached out to her and she was so happy. We ended up talking for 3 hours on the phone. And then she came to Chicago and we had dinner with her and her husband. It was the best. And now we're
So
back in
nice.
touch. She couldn't have been happier. And that is the experience you're going to find with almost anyone you reconnect with.
I agree. I think it's important. We are our biggest limitation when it comes to reconnecting. I think why would somebody want to be, I'm in such a bad state, I'm in whatever. And if you want to draw yourself down, there are many ways that you can do that. But at the same time, these are connections that other people yearn for as well as much as you do. And so you actually not just doing yourself a favor, but you're actually doing a favor for those people if you see them and you reach out to them.
Yes, you're doing them a favor too. All right, we have a couple more. This is my favorite one. I will love again like never before. Oh, that is great.
This one kind of hit me, and this was not just a epiphany. It really was. I was going to a therapist when I went through my divorce. I was going to two or three different support groups, and somebody made a comment here, somebody made a comment there, and all of a sudden it came to me when I put it all together was, when you 20 years old and you meet somebody, and like I'm going to speak from a guy's perspective more maybe. Um, and you say, "Oh, I started dating somebody," and it's not like, "Well, tell me about her values." Tell me, your friends are going to be like, "Is she hot? Is she?" You know what I mean? It's a very superficial kind of entree into the dating world and sometimes into marriage when you're that young. Well, now you really have a whole different knowledge of really what is it that a person is. Are they so much more than just good looks or they dress well or whatever it is, right? That's the outer layer of them. But now we know what we want. Now we know more how to connect with somebody. And I think that brings a depth of a relationship that sometimes people have not had, even if they've been married for 20 years, they may not have developed that. But what they've been through at this point is such a huge lesson in being able to connect with somebody. And there's work that's got to be done with that. I don't want to say you can snap your fingers and you've got your list and everything's good. This is not a chat GBT kind of thing, right? This is really, you've got to put in the work, you've got to explore who you are. And a lot of the things we've spoken about, I think, are the pieces to it. Are you reconnecting with yourself? Are you looking at the opportunities? Are you reevaluating what brings you joy? Well, now bringing a new partner into your life is going to enhance all of those things in such a way that you've never had before.
Oh, I just love that. And also, people say to me, like, I've written so many articles about like why love over 50 is so great. And honestly, it's because of me. I'm such a better partner and such a different person I take accountability for the demise of my marriage for some of it. And I was awful. When I look back at how I acted, it was terrible. I am so much nicer. I'm more patient. I'm more vulnerable. I'm more thoughtful. And, I think it's a combination of who the person is, but it also has so much to do with me and the growth that I have experienced over the last, decade or so. Or
Yeah,
continually, we just keep getting to be evolving into better people, we hope,
right.
throughout our whole lives.
I agree. I think, divorce can be very challenging. There's no question about it. And you've got through it, or you getting through it, whichever one it is. And that in itself is almost like an accomplishment worth celebrating, right? The way I want every one of my clients to celebrate that is, they've accomplished something that's big. They've got through a very, very challenging, demanding time. Now they can go out and they can live a very rewarding life in a way that sometimes they haven't been able to imagine before, but it's possible and it's there. And go get it is really the bottom line.
Oh, that's such a great way to end this podcast. But I do want to say your last one was, how am I going to get through this? So, what do you say when people ask you that?
You know, the cliched idiom of one day at a time is definitely the way you want to start. You want to surround yourself with very positive people. You want to focus on the future, something you brought out a couple times. You want to be able to think about the priorities, reconnect with yourself so that you know how to build that life. As you said earlier, there's not the same amount of money, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a better life with less money if you really know what brings you joy and what's rewarding in your life. So I think a lot of what we've discussed already is how do I bring this, like, how do I get through this? Again, you do need your support team. I tell people you need a professional team, you need an emotional team, but it's doable and it's there. And just lean on the people that are good for you. Get your divorce coach, as you said, whoever it is that's going to bring out the best in you and help you move forward and look at that future.
And I'm just going to add to that what you said, but surround yourself with really good divorce professionals, good people, but also professionals, including Hirsch. And you can find them all on divorcedgirlsmiling.com. And honestly, these divorce coaches, Hirsch, financial coach, it makes a difference. It makes a
Yeah.
difference in your overall divorce experience and stress level, but it also makes a difference in the outcome that you get for your divorce that's going to set you up for the rest of your life.
I,
So, on that note, Hirsch, thank you so much. I loved this conversation.
I did too. It was great. Thank you.
And tell my listeners how they can get in touch with you if they want to have a consult with you.
Absolutely. I do give a free consult just to get an understanding, better understanding. You can reach me through lifecycle.financial. It's the name of the company. It's the easiest way. And you can email me through the website, lifecycle.financial.
And what's the name of your podcast and how can they get to that?
The Financial Wellness Hour. And there actually is a link on my website, and it's got embedded in there almost 4 years worth of podcasts. So they can reach it through there.
Yeah, I've been on a couple. And then you can
Yeah.
also find Hirsch in the trusted professional section of divorcedgirlsmiling.com. And all of the links will be in there too. And if you want to read articles, listen to more podcasts, download my mobile app, sign up for my free consult, come see me at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for
Thank
listening,
you.
everyone, and we'll talk to you real soon.